family and friends, we gather here today to remember Don Roy Cairns Kay and Rosalind Beryl Kay, husband and wife to each other, parents, grandparents, brother, sister, in-laws, auntie, uncle, cousins, and good friends to many. We have come together to give thanks for their lives, to honour and to support one another in our grief as we remember. And as we stop the busyness of daily life to pay tribute to their lives and all their lives meant to us, we are also here to offer our respect, support, love and friendship to their children, David, Lynn, Ian, and all family members as they carry the burden of their loss. May each of you find comfort through us being here with you today. We hold close in our hearts all family members and friends who cannot be with you today. Many are joining us through live streaming. Remember grandson Matthew, the only grandson who is unable to be with us today, but we know he is feeling the love and the support as well. My name is Petra. I feel deeply privileged to have been asked to preside at this service, to acknowledge and honour and pay tribute to Don and Rosalind's lives. Can I ask that you please do check that your mobile phone is on silent for the duration of the service, and we are live streaming. Thank you. Did you like the little hello from heaven that we got as you arrived? Hey, Don and Rosalind turned on the sprinklers for us. They know we're pretty dry down here, so that was a little probably hello from them to us. Today being here unites us all because we share in a common bond of love and respect for Don and Rosalind. Nothing can detract from the joy and the experiences that we have all had with them, and neither time nor circumstance will change the love and affection they had for you, their family and their friends. You may wonder why it's been so long since we gathered. COVID was a very large factor in the delay. But when a couple have been married as long as Don and Rosalind have, it was just too hard for Don to let his Rosie go. He had told me on more than one occasion that they would go together. And so today, it's so fitting in life and in death that they are together, just how they wanted to be. And for this service of thanksgiving to be held in this church, which was a part of their lives, and you, the congregational members who have walked with them. While grief is not something we seek, it is a great indicator and measure of love and the relationship had, because grief simply does not and cannot exist except for where there has been love and relationship. I believe that the inner ache, the pain of the grief we feel, bears testimony to the depths of love and admiration. Grief, I often say, is a heavy weight, but it's a privileged weight that we get to share. In time, little by little, we will begin to remember not just that Don and Rosalind have died, but in fact they lived 91 and 81 years respectively. And in those years, they have made many memories with each and every one of you, memories too beautiful to forget. May we find comfort in believing, as they did, that they now are reunited together forever in a place where there is no more pain, suffering or tears, but only love and peace. A place where there is no parting, a place where there are no words that say goodbye. And while death is the end of a mortal life, it marks a new beginning in our relationship with God. I am the resurrection and the life, says the Lord. Those who believe in me, even though they die, yet will they live. When we talk and share about those we love, they come back to us in a very special way. We are reminded that words are the tools of resurrection. They bring back cherished memories, a a smile, a tear and a journey. And so I invite the family forward to share with us today, starting with eldest son David, followed by only daughter Lynn, eldest grandson Joshua, and only granddaughter Joanna. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Petra. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. It's great to see you here today. It's a bit hard to work out how to summarise 172 years. So what I'm going to do is try and tell a bit of a love story that lasted 60 years. So Dad was born in 1932, Mum in 1938. Dad had a sister Nina and a youngest brother Bill, both of them unable to be here today due to ill health. Malcolm was Mum's brother, 4 years younger. Dad's earliest memory is riding his wooden horse. Maybe I just shift that. Is that better? Right. Okay. How's that? Is that better? Yep. Right. And Mum's first memories were of her grandparents' deli and small goods shop, and the singing of Mum's mother, Eunice, and the family. Dad grew up in Alma Road, Clayfield. Mum grew up in Ramsay Street, Haberfield, Sydney, where her grandmother was, and then moved to Belmore, Sydney, and then in 1948 to the Lennons Hotel in George Street, Brisbane, when they first moved up here, and then to Taringa, and then to St Lucia, Brisbane. World War II affected both of them. For Dad, he was 7, and his father had been in World War I in the Middle East. Dad used to travel to Zilmere to chop wood for his grandmother on 11-acre hobby farm. He'd ride his scooter to the station, then he'd travel to Zilmere and then ride the other 2.5 kilometres to the farm and then chop the wood. He would remember the soldiers marching from Chermside to Sandgate and the Navy ships at Redcliffe. Mum was 1.5 when her father, Doug, a lieutenant in the 6th Division, went to the Middle East. She has no memories of him at that stage. Eunice and Mum lived with their grandmother in the deli, as I said, and she remembers getting dressed at the age of 3 and seeing in her best clothes and seeing crowds of people and being put into the arms of a strange man. Sorry, excuse me. Meet your daddy, her mum said. Afterwards, she realised years later that she was living with a man, in retrospect, who had PTSD. For schooling, Dad finished school at the age of after 2 years of high school. Mum initially in Belmore and then finished Form 4 at grammar school in Brisbane. She met her lifelong friend Dorothy there. Growing up, well, Dad was mucking about with Bill, chaperoning his sister. He used to say the apple of his mum's eye. And from what I can gather, she had a fairly good social life. Dad grumbled about having to do a lot of chaperoning, but he seemed to enjoy the fringe benefits that came with that, getting to know Nina's friends. Rosalind wasn't the male heir, and she was frustrated that she couldn't do much to do anything commendable in her dad's eyes. He was really suffering, and it took her years to realise that. Mum was adventurous, she pushed the boundaries, and she formed a wonderful bond with Mal over the years, and I use her words. They, of course, had the normal sibling rivalries and fun together. And when Mal started high school, they began to grow closer, to become close and best friends that they stayed all their lives. Dad's first job was at the age of 15 as an apprentice mechanic in a construction company in Nunda. At first it was good, and then the mechanic left and things went south. The boss's son, who had an attitude that I'm better than you, got Dad to start spray painting trucks and things like that, using petrol as a thinner because it was hard to get thinners at the time. Probably not the safest thing to do. But then the boss's son asked him to go down into the bitumen tanker they had and take a blowtorch and ask him to get rid of the bitumen. At that point, Dad refused, because he said it, he would have been blown sky high. He lived to tell the tale. He got the sack straight away, and then his father got an apprenticeship at Main Roads. Mum's first job was in Allen and Stark's store in Queen Street, Brisbane, for a 3-week pre-Christmas work experience. Dad had a career at Main Roads and the government motor garage for 40 years, becoming foreman and ultimately assistant manager. He was ultimately retrenched during the privatisation rounds around 1990. That was hard for him. He took part-time jobs as a car park attendant and did some lecturing at TAFE. But his job connected him when he was at the government garage with lots of people. And Dad would regale us of all these wonderful stories of Christmas party, the government house Christmas parties and all of that. And he had lots of interesting stories. He restored a vintage bus with a whole bunch of apprentices as a work experience exercise. He got up in a helicopter here or there. So while it was at times tough and not a well-paid job, he had really enjoyed the benefits of it. Mum left school at the end of Form 4, going on to work at the National Mutual Insurance Company in the addressograph department. Now, I defy everybody in here to work out what an addressograph is, so go and have a look at it afterwards, okay? On being offered the job, Rosalind did as her father instructed and said, "Well, thank you very much, I'll consider your offer." She was promptly reminded that it was she that had applied for the job. When she stammered, but my dad told me to say that, she was allowed home to report to her dad first before she accepted the job. She had chosen National Mutual on the basis of recommendations of some of her good friends, that it was a very social group of people and of similar age to her. And she really met some great friends there. June, Lorraine, Betty, Leslie. Well, she knew Leslie beforehand, but they were all lifelong friends for her. Mum used to see this well-dressed, middle-aged gentleman on her way to the bus on the way home from work, standing on a street corner, and he would often tip his hat to her. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Later in life, Mum worked in the tourist information for 10 years. Don and his brother built a house at Broadbeach, and Bill decided to go to a dance at Southport Surf Lifesaving Club. Well, Rosalind and Dorothy at the same time had gone to Surfers Paradise for the weekend to stay with her parents who were down there. They go to the same dance. Dorothy meets Bill and Ros meets someone else. Both accept dates. Dorothy, unbeknown to Ros, had set up a drive the next day as a foursome with Mum. Don gets talked into going with his brother on this drive, reluctantly. Dorothy won't accept no for an answer, and Rosalind gives in reluctantly. She had other plans, like the guy she'd met the night before. Bill and Dorothy hit it off. Rosalind and Don are not impressed and are being forced company in the back seat. Needless to say, nothing came of that. Dad continues to enjoy the fringe benefits. He goes out with another Rosalind. Dorothy tells Ros of a meeting Don and Rosalind at Bill's 21st. Rosalind goes out with someone else. Don picks his father up from work. Yes, that well-dressed gentleman sees Rosalind every day. Don sees Rosalind, and I'm not sure exactly how this happened, but I think he probably pressured Bill and Dorothy to find out how to get a number, and rings her up and asks her out. I don't know, I haven't got the facts. Several days later, Bill and Dorothy are told about their blossoming relationship, and they set up a new foursome. And this time they drive to Dalby for the day. On the way back, when Dad starts driving home, after they swapped, Don and Ros accidentally touch, and they both apparently felt an electricity, and that was that. Engagement on the 13th of April 1959, and they were married a year later. Wedding at St Lucia Methodist Church, where Mum spent many happy days with her friends. The reception at Lennon's Hotel, that place she first arrived at. Well, Bill when the reception finished, Bill was to drive them away from the reception so that they could get rid of all the friends and then go back to the hotel for the night before they went to Sydney. The only problem was, as Bill drove away, he got a flat tyre. So here's Dad and Bill in their finest trying to change the tyre when all of their friends, young friends, are going past, killing themselves laughing at the hapless couple. Fortunately, a taxi came to their rescue. They honeymooned at Bondi Beach and the Jenolan Caves. Now this is interesting. Don remarked to Rosalind, "Dear, did you realise your nightie is see-through?" On their honeymoon, Mum had always had a good laugh about that. They first lived at Wooloowin in a flat. Lots of complaint about them from the other flats. Too long a shower, too much noise, too much loud music. Mum dressing provocatively towards the landlord's husband. She wore shorts apparently. Lots of entertaining, except Mum only had one dish in her repertoire that she could easily reheat after work. Eventually Dad's pleaded with her not to make that fish dish again. Saving for their first and only home, Don and Rosalind continued to work. Mum, pregnant 8 months later, as a head of the department, gave notice for about a few weeks before she was due to leave. She miscarried. However, the company wouldn't allow her to continue as a manager because her manager disapproved of women working after marriage. Rosalind and Don chose a block of land in Macrobat. Why would you want to live all that way up there? £800 for the land, depositing £1,136 from the house that Bill and Don built at Broadbeach, and then they borrowed £2,835, repaying $32 a month basically, and that was for their whole mortgaged life. Amazing conditions. Bill and Jackie married in 1961 and tell the story of Don and with Rosalind heavily pregnant coming to see them off at the airport. Rosalind, attempting to cover Bill and Jackie in confetti, covered herself instead, and much embarrassment walking back to the car park covered in confetti, looking like she just got married. Back then, things were a little bit different in the way people perceive things. Times have probably changed a bit. I was born in 1962, Lynn was born 19 months later in 63, and Ian in 1969. Mum and Dad did not have a car. Lots of walking was required, and the promised public transport did not eventuate till many years later. Mum managed how she managed 2 and then 3 children, walking down to the supermarket, because you know Mount Gravatt, it is hilly, and back again, and back was always the hilly part. I don't know, it must have been hard. I know there was a taxi at times, but it was tough. Dad had to travel long ways to work and walk, tram, bus, etc. They were on a tight budget. I was never really aware that we were lacking anything. There was plenty of love and fun, but I only once remember in all of my time that there was something that we could not afford something. In 1972, Dad purchased our first family car, a 1962 EJ Holden, nicknamed Bessie. Some years later, we had a 1976 HJ Kingswood, not the Kingswood. Mum got a licence in 1974, but the lessons with the kids in the car were really, really tough because we used to think the kangaroo hopping was lots of fun and that wasn't easy for Mum. So the RACV came to the rescue. Family life was busy, lots of times with cousins and relatives and close friends such as the Websters and Chapmans, etc. Our neighbourhood was friendly and social. One Christmas I remember a trip to the Gold Coast for lunch for Dad's side of the family, and then a trip to Buderim in the evening for Mum's side of the family. That was a crazy day, but it was a good one. Family was important. And even though the budget was tight, there were holidays to the beach, down south, etc., to see family. East Mount Gravatt Methodist Church was a short walk away, and Mum and Dad and us have lifelong friends from there. The Sunday school, the progressive dinners, the youth group, the dances, the concerts, the camps are all fond memories. When it grew, fundraising for the new church. They never really got over the move from there to here. They were really sad at the end of that community, but that's how it was. Scouts, guides, all of that. When the kids were getting older, Mum decided that she needed to be one step ahead of us, and so she went off and finished her high school English, history, maths, and just to be able to help us, and also put her potentially in a better position for a career later. She had thought about doing teaching. When looking for the photos for today, we had a little bit of a struggle because we realised there's a big gap. The gap started around not long after, when we were kids, and finished probably at the end of us, leaving home, etc., or just prior to that. And that was because there was a lot of 8mm film and slides, and getting off that was not so easy. Mum was the social butterfly of the house, collecting people wherever she went. Like her mum, the same. Dad was always there supporting her and would be pitching in at whatever the event. Dad was a romantic underneath, and I've heard say more than once that he was a good lover. She never really went into details. And at one stage, she's busily telling Sue and I that, on one of their dates to themselves, just with a twinkle in their eye, they never explained what that meant. We would just innocently say, "So what does over amorous mean, Mum?" In 1980, I left home. Lynn a year later, Gatton, and Ian became an only child. Eventually, Ian would leave home and move to Torwood. But before he did, he bought a house next door as an investment, never thinking he'd move and live there. There were trips to Melbourne, Gatton, and the various places that Lynn lived. If you rang home, Dad would usually answer saying, "Hi, how are you? I'll get Mum." And she would chat away. It became a challenge and a bit of a running joke to see how long we could hold him on the phone talking. In 1987, Mum and her mum, Rosalind, her mum, volunteered for Expo, as Mum called it, a 6-month party. And then as a result of that, then Mum volunteered in the Tourist Information Centre in Roma Street Station, ultimately being employed for 10 years as the manager of that centre. That gave her and Don a chance to see and visit many places that were being promoted and see and have experiences that many people don't get. Mum also made many new friends, as she always did. Mum and Dad got involved in the University of the Third Age, and this is where some of Mum's writing about today I was able to use. Dad got involved in Neighbourhood Watch, and watch he did. That's all I can say. Be careful, Don's watching. When I went to France, Don, Rosalind and Lynn took the opportunity to visit, and that's where we discovered that Dad's memories of the war resurfaced. He became very quiet. And at one stage, we were getting so frustrated with his quiet. And of course, the French people who like to be polite were going, "He's not talking, he's not responding." And so at one stage, I flippantly said, "Il est mute, he's deaf." Mum shot a look at me with a twinkle in her eye. We walked out of the hotel room, the reception centre, and she is just bursting out laughing, giggling. And then for the rest of the trip, it was like, "Il est mute." It was a bit of a joke. But in seriousness, it was flooding back the memories of all those locations that Dad heard the painful stories of during the war. In 1993, when I returned, a casual phone call with Mum, I just happened to say one day, "Oh, I'm engaged to Sue," at the end of the conversation, to which she called me a rat. I'd caught her off guard. Anyway, Sue came to Brisbane to meet the family, of course, and we went out on the Kookaburra Queen, I think it was. Dad, being a bit of a joker that he was underneath, started fondling my knee to see if he could trick me into thinking Sue was doing it. I caught him out when I placed my hand on his and thought, "That is not Sue's hand, it's not that big." Mum loved her time as mother of the groom, prospective mother-in-law, and Sue was welcomed warmly. Mum had another ally. In 1995, the arrival of grandchildren was a new experience. Joshua, and then Samuel, and then Matthew and Daniel over the next 6.5 years. Visits south for various events, and family would visit Brisbane. Time with grandchildren was short but precious. Mum wrote, 6 hugs, 6 kisses, inevitable tears, and finally they're gone. Don and I drink coffee in the family room amongst the scattered toys, boxes of Lego, listening to the silence, missing them already. Rosalind's dad's health was failing and parental care a priority until passing away in 2003. Eunice needed then more care and support until she died at the age of 102 in 2011. Travel was more difficult, and so trips became more difficult and less frequent. Ian and Louise married in 2005 and moved to Torwood, another destination to travel to. Joanna, born in 2005 with Liam in 2008, well, we had grandchildren living next door. New concept, new opportunity. Jumped at the opportunity to become carers full-time. and when Louise returned to work. And Eunice was a big part of that as well as being cared for. Eunice's death in 2011 meant that travel became an option and the start of the cruises. And this is where it gets interesting. The first cruise, at Christmas a year after, Rosalind fell and ultimately was taken off the cruise on Christmas Day, and then airlifted home a few days later. It's quite a long recovery for her. Her husband Mal passed with the same disease not long ago at the same age as Rosalind. Dad never expected her to pass, and it was a shock to him that this had happened. Don picked himself up, took on the role that Ros had in keeping in touch with the family. Every morning he would sit there and ring people to update them on what was happening, update news, etc. Some of us had daily calls, some of them more, others periodic, and some almost hourly, which Louise can attest to. I missed those calls mostly on my way to and from work, which is when I often spoke to him. You know, on our trip around Australia, Sue and I swore that Dad had a sensor. Every time we got into a difficult situation towing a caravan, Dad would ring. In fact, I was just about to go across Sydney. Dad rings me and I say, Dad, I'm driving across Sydney for the first time by myself. I've never towed a caravan on my own. I'm driving across Sydney and I'm having to do these very tricky manoeuvres across 5 or 6 lanes of traffic to turn right and all sorts of stuff. Can you leave me be for about an hour or two? Well, right on cue, at that 5 lanes of traffic turning right, Dad rings. And I can't do anything about it because I had set the car up on auto answer. Hi, where are you? I'm just at that intersection, Dad. When Dad was diagnosed with cancer in 2022 in August, he opted not to have intensive treatment, as the doctors had told him it would shorten his life even more. Ian and Louise were his carers during that time and were magnificent, with us southern children only really able to breathe in and breathe out and not really see what was really going on. The last 2 months for Dad were pretty tough. He spent the last 2 weeks in hospital, but his last act of mischief was to attempt to get out of bed at 1 a.m. and go looking for his favourite butcher's pie. It wasn't really a great move, but it was one last adventure. I think I'll use Mum's words to finish to describe the love that Rosalind and Don had for each other. I pay tribute to the man with whom I have spent all but the first 19 years of my life. He has been my best friend, lover, and unfailing supporter of all my schemes and dreams. No matter how crazy some of them were, have been, I cannot imagine my life without him. They were very much in love, and we have been. Thank you.
I don't know whether I can match that, David. I think most of you know me. I'm Lynn, Mum and Dad's only daughter. So yeah, the photo that you see of Mum and Dad, I took of them in Paris. Dad, we just had to do an operation on to get his sunglasses off at the time. We fought very hard and we won, Mum and I. And that was just near the Eiffel Tower and an avenue of trees. And it became their favourite photo and our favourite photo of them. The reason for the red roses on the table is that Dad always gave Mum a dozen red roses. So there's one for each of them there. The blue wrens, Mum loved blue wrens. And the little blue wren on the fence post there, I found on a drive up to Brisbane and when she was in hospital one time and gave that to her to cheer her up, and I have never ever seen them again. Dad loved his trains, and they loved the Cocker Spaniels, of course. Having had Cocker Spaniels for many years, from when I was 3, with Silky, followed by Jason, the golden cocker, and then by Mum and Dad's girls, Chocky and Meggie, and finally with Shadow and Jenny. And Shadow's still at home. She was aptly named, she would follow Mum and Dad everywhere. So, yeah. So as an apology to a couple of musical artists here, we've slightly changed things. So I suppose the first one is, how do I say goodbye to someone who's been with me for my whole life? You've both given me my name and the colour of your eyes. I see your face when I look at mine. How do I say goodbye? Physically we do, but I don't think you actually say goodbye mentally. Because all of us carry a piece of mum and dad with us in how we knew them. We've got different memories of them, whether it's as mum and dad, Nan and granddad, Don and Roz, Mr and Mrs K. Through our different relationships that we've had with them, cousins, brothers, sisters, grandparents, aunt, uncles, in-laws, friends, work colleagues. And we'd like to invite you at the end to share your memories of mum and dad in the book that you signed on if you'd like to. We'd very much appreciate that. Mum and dad were my lighthouse. I've shifted around a lot with work. They got a daughter who was a tomboy and presented them in the 80s or 70s with, I want to be a vet or a national park ranger. Not really things that you think a girl would do at the time. But we had mum and dad's full support, which was brilliant. Very unusual career choices. And they gave us all, 3 kids, solid foundations with the values that they raised us with. They gave us the tools to navigate the oceans of life. So we were able to do that. Now they're gone. They were always there to support us. And I can remember mum going with us to various career days and also to the show, and I would tear off to the National Park stand as soon as I saw a girl there. Finally there was a girl ranger. They allowed us to follow our dreams, and we 3 kids were very lucky that we got to do the careers that we wanted to do. Not many can say that. And I went to Gatton College, which back then was unusual for a girl as well, and then finally got a job with Parks, which was very unusual for a girl, especially in Queensland. And then when I went to South Australia, there were 6 of us for the whole state. We had a state dinner where they put the female ranger at each of the tables, so 6 of us at each of the main tables, which we thought was hilarious. And then finally to New South Wales, where there's a lot more of us. And I work in a team where there's 1 fellow and 5 female rangers, which is quite unusual. And mum and dad have been there all the way, helping me move. Though that stopped at Rainbow Beach. They sort of gave up after about 3 moves of helping me move. Don't know why. I think it was all the packing and unpacking. For the first few moves, everything would fit in the 2 cars. It got a bit bigger after that. And they got to see a fair bit of the country with me through Queensland, South Australia, and up here, Melbourne with Sue and David, Paris and other countries with David, and Torwood with Ian and other places. Over the years, Mum's done a few different things, including being assistant midwife to my Cocker Spaniels. When they've been giving birth, she never thought she'd be doing that. Though she did comment that Dad basically did what he normally did when us kids were being born and went to sleep. Because invariably the girls would give birth in the middle of the night, so Mum and I'd be out there doing what we had to do and Dad would be snoring in the bedroom. And it was interesting, these little pups would always think that Mum and Dad were their safe place to go. And when they went outside for the first time, they would crowd around Mum and Dad's feet because they were safe. And they used to love being held by Dad. When I was recovering from a broken leg in New South Wales, Dad had an absolutely lovely time playing with my work toys, including the 4-wheel drive Land Cruiser and a mule, which was like a golf cart on steroids, that we used to get around in. Mum and Dad were both stubborn, and I remember having a conversation with Dad on one of the trips up to Brisbane in the last year. And Dad was sort of trying to get across to me that he was stubborn. And I said to him, well, Dad, I'm half of you and I'm half of Mum, and you are both stubborn. So guess what? He gave up. And the other thing was that, you know, he complained about having to do things when we were trying to get him to do stuff. And I've had a number of injuries at work and received many a lecture from Mum and Dad. So I'd sit there and I would say to him, and Mum too when she hurt her knee, a very wise man or a very wise woman once said this to me, and repeat back to them the lecture that they gave me. And then said to them, these are your words. You're old enough and ugly enough to then make a decision with what you do with them. So, you know, you lecture me, I'll lecture you, sort of thing. When we were travelling, we always had to ring Mum and Dad. When Mum and Dad started travelling, the three of us kids said, right. And they had to call in. Their complaint was they had to make 3 phone calls. Didn't worry us, we wanted to hear from them. Finished off basically with another quote from another singer who wrote a song called Supermarket Flowers. You're an angel in the shape of my mum and dad. You got to see the person that I have become. Spread your wings, and I know that when God calls you home, calls you back, say hallelujah, you're home. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Joshua. I'm the eldest grandchild of Rosalind and Don and the eldest child of David and Sue. And I'm here to talk about Rosalind or Nan and Samuel, my brother, who's going to talk about Granddad or Don. And I'm so glad that we get to do this. So glad that we get to do this to really celebrate who Rosalind and Don were and the wonderful people that they were, the wonderful friends and grandparents, especially that they were to all of us, to Samuel, Matthew, Daniel, Johanna, Liam, and myself. So what can I say about Nan? Well, living in Melbourne or Sydney meant that trips to see Nan were few and far between. And I remember that there were very, very long journeys in the car over 2 or 3 days, journeying up, staying in some really strange motels along the way. But it would always be worth it to see Nan standing at the door and receive one of her big hugs, because Nan could give hugs like no one else could. And I think in many ways that's a manifestation of who Nan was, that she was caring, that she was warm, she was nurturing to everyone she met, and especially to us as grandkids as well. And we really saw that in the way that she looked after her own mum, or Nana as we used to call her, the way that she looked after her own kids, as with her dad and Auntie Lyndall talk about, and the way that she looked after all of us as well. She was always interested to know what was going on in our lives. I always knew that I could pick up the phone and tell Nan my latest story or marks I got on an assignment, and that she'd always be keen to hear it. And by the same token, in addition to being a wonderful listener, Nan was also a wonderful talker. Nan could tell a story, as I'm sure many of us know. And every now and again you'd see that cheeky little smile light up her face, see the glimmer in her eye, and she'd regale us with some story about how she challenged her boss one day, or something along those lines. And really, she had, in that sense, that zest for life. And that's something that both Dad and Auntie Lyndall talked about, and something that I certainly hope that I can embody as well. She left us with many wonderful memories, all of us as grandchildren. But in addition to those memories, she also left us with the knowledge that we were loved and that we were really special to her. And that, I think, is the greatest gift you can give a grandchild, and Nan certainly did that.
Yeah, I think for Grandad, I think like one of the things that I just remember so fondly about him was just like his sharing of his like loves and interests with us. And I think for Josh and I in particular, out of the 4 boys, that looks like his love of trains. And some young boys, like there was nothing more exciting than joining Grandad on some of his train expeditions. And it was definitely a memory that's stuck with me so clearly, like when we went to Ipswich Train Museum and we just spent the day with Grandad just running around, climbing all over the trains, using the train simulators. It still is to this day just one that just sticks out just so clearly above so many other memories of just time spent with our grandfather, just having so much fun with him. It didn't end there. Like when we came home, he had his marvellous little train set that it was so often set up for us whenever we would come up from Melbourne. And it was always a highlight. Like Yes would come, Yes would say like hi to them at the door and stuff like that. But then it was always a race to see if Grandad's train set had been set up. Unfortunately for Grandad, passing on that enthusiasm for trains to us, I think he was not fully prepared for the enthusiasm and the passion in which we would grab hold of it and with which we played with that train set with. So for him, I think it resulted in many, many hours trying to fix the trains that we would race around the track and inevitably send off the table tennis table or whatever table it was that all set up onto the concrete floor. But that was definitely a very fond memory. I think also when I think of Grandad, I think of just a man who seemed to complement Nan almost perfectly. Like Nan, as like we've all said, was just wonderful at sitting down and talking with you. But often during those times of sitting down with Nan, you would see Grandad up and about, like doing things around the place. Like he would always be up first thing in the morning, making sure the dogs were fed. You'd see him out with the lawnmower, making sure that everything was neat and tidy, like the house was always in great order. And I think so much of that was just down to Grandad's just selfless love, which he just showed through just caring for Nan and for doing like all those like daily chores around the house. He was a man that, very much put himself or put others before himself. He was always the first face that you would see. He would be the one that would pick you up from the airport in the car. He would be the one that would, always be there. And it was, always just something that it was like a constant about coming up to Brisbane to see the grandparents. You always knew that he would be there waiting for you if you needed a pickup. I think like the two of them have given all of us grandkids just some fantastic memories of them. As Josh said, like we were very much loved by them and we loved them dearly. Thank you.
Alright, is this on? Working? Yeah. Okay. First of all, I made the mistake of not wearing waterproof mascara, so I apologise for my makeup. But for those who don't know me, I am Johanna Kay, and I was Rosalind and Don's favourite granddaughter. This is for many reasons, although most notably because I was their only granddaughter. My grandparents did so many wonderful things throughout their lives, but today I'm speaking on behalf of my younger brother Liam and myself to share some fond memories about our Nan and Ray. A fun fact that most of you now know is that we had the privilege of living next door to our grandparents. In fact, Nan and Ray looked after both of us full-time, Monday to Friday, for the first 3 years of our lives once our parents went back to work. And therefore, we spent hours upon hours together as we grew up. In recent years, this included Nan helping me with my awful English homework and teaching me to cook some of my favourite meals. Also, spending hours beside Liam at his desk learning about his latest computer games. Grandad driving Liam and I to the bus in the mornings before school, and when he didn't, we always both received a phone call from him. Another for me is our grocery shopping dates, which more often than not resulted in an iced coffee and some lunch, which was always his shout. For Liam, it was the hours spent He spent next door with our granddad while he built and played with the impressive train set that Sammy was just talking about. Sorry. But when we reflect on our most treasured childhood memories, there are so many that come to mind, and most of them include Nan and Ray. So I thought I would share some of our favourites with you all. One of our family's favourites is the story of the airport. Some of you know my dad and I are pretty similar in many ways, and Nan and Ray truly experienced a similarity when they took me to the airport for the first time. I'm really exposing him here, but when Dad was a boy, he found a game in hiding between women's clothing racks when he went shopping with Nan. While me, I preferred jumping the security line and finding a game of tag throughout the gates of the domestic airport. I definitely caused a few heart attacks, and I can promise you they never took me to the airport again. An iconic one that comes to mind that some of you may not know is I actually gave Grandad his nickname Ray. This is due to his iconic farewell that I'm assuming most of you know, hooray. Following this, the shock when I found out that wasn't actually his real name. Another one is Grandad teaching me to tie my shoelaces before my first day of year 1, or the fact I hardly allowed him ever to take naps, always waking him up with an aggressive slap to the knees. And on the few occasions I did actually allow him to take a nap, it usually resulted in him getting a new hairstyle. My favourite to do was always the mohawk. A fun memory I share with Nan is me always needing to go to the bathroom, only to re-emerge with a bright red lipstick, some very unblended blush, and a new pair of high heels which were a million sizes too big for me, and never getting in trouble for it. Also, my love for building tents out of sheets and dining room chairs with a lot of help. I quite literally used all the pots, pans and strainers and anything else I could get my hands on to set up a restaurant. And Nan never complained as she sat and watched her dirty dishes multiply. For Liam, he treasures the memories of all the grandparents' days at school, which both Nan and Ray attended. These days included walking around and showing them our classrooms, meeting our teachers, and showing them all the classwork we had completed throughout the year. But more importantly, the idea that they gained a few extra grandchildren every year as they took a few of our friends who didn't have grandparents to attend under their wings. They treated our friends just as their own and were interested in everything they had to say. Also, them sneaking all the food that was strictly for grandparents only when no one was looking, and spoiling us at the book fest, which was conveniently held on the same day. Although in the end it is the small things I'm going to miss, like the phone calls, the constant phone calls, and the overall comfort of knowing that they were right next door whenever I needed some company or someone to talk to. I saw this quote that I thought was quite fitting and wanted to share. The reality is that you will grieve forever. You will not get over the loss of a loved one, you will learn to live with it. You will heal and you will rebuild yourself around the loss you have suffered. You will be whole again, but you will never be the same. I think this perfectly encapsulates the huge influence that our grandparents had on everyone they met. My grandparents were some of the most hardworking, kind, considerate people that I've ever met, and I'm very proud to be their favourite granddaughter. If I become even half the person that they were, I'll be pretty happy. Thank you all again for coming and sharing this day with us.
Thank you for that sharing. I'd like to invite Lynn forward and Ian, who will share with us some words of comfort from the Holy Scriptures. Thank you.
Okay. Psalm of David, Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness. For his name's sake, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadows and tears, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell on the house of the Lord forever. Amen.
Reading from the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. If I speak in tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonour others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. And now these three things remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Now I haven't spoken yet, and me being me, I'll go a bit off script, which was what Mum and Dad knew me for. In fact, I was the training package for my kids for when they got to look after them. So Mum and Dad were originally planning on having this at their place at home. Now, Dad did build the back deck, and whilst he was a mechanic, he was very good at other things as well, but the thought of actually putting he can't help himself. The thought of actually putting all of you on the back deck, I didn't fancy the idea of getting disclaimers off all of you, so you're welcome. So I reckon you would have ended up on the pavers downstairs. But now, there was a couple of things that I just wanted to read, because whilst Mum and Dad had family and friends, it really wasn't family and friends, because one of their greatest or strongest points was that when you were a friend, you're actually part of the family. That's the way they treated everybody. So I'll read a quote from a book that Mum actually had in some writing. So for those of you who don't know, Mum actually wrote her life story, which ended up about that thick, and it makes very interesting reading. So this was a part that was in there, and it was called Real Friendship Cake. Cook's note: this recipe takes extra preparation and work. You will need a bunch of love, the kind that is long-suffering and bears all things, the kind that does not keep score of mistakes or slips of the tongue. Blend this with a serving of patience and add the following ingredients. A strong helping of backbone support is necessary, for friendship is moulded upon an understanding that leaning is appropriate. Fold in the promise to guard secrets and the willingness to tell one's own. Combine humour, the sweet taste of easy laughter, and a fiery brand of loyalty to keep the relationship firm. A golden touch of the ability to sit in silence will add to the overall consistency, and a pinch of exuberant jubilation at the sound of someone else's good news will add flavour. Stir in a commitment of time and attention, and add a bit of surprise to taste. Once the ingredients have been mixed together, treat this dish with care, and remember, this is one cake that you can have and eat it too. And that was from the book The Friendship Cake by Lynn Hinton, and I think most people would agree that that's exactly how Mum treated her friends. And just one final part from the book, and it's actually in relation to death. Why is death so confronting when we all know it is a logical progression in the scheme of things? The grief of separation is the obvious answer, and I think perhaps also the stark reminder of our own mortality, and the realisation that life will not be quite the same again after each relative and friend is taken from us. We just have to make the most of each day and our time together with those that we love. Thank you very much for coming.
I'm just going to talk briefly about the readings that were chosen today. The reading shared with us by Lynn, the Psalm of David, better known as Psalm 23, is one of the most chosen readings, as it is one of assurance for we who remain. It's about going through the dark valley, the valley of tears, the valley of shadow and trials. And often we just miss that little word through, but it is a key word. This scripture reassures us that we don't get stuck in the valley. We go through it. And when we get through it, we are promised amazing promises, the cup overflowing, the banquet table set in our honour. Don and Rosalind both went through these valleys, the valleys of tears and trials throughout their lives, because they lived their lives full and real, and to do so we have to go through everything. It's a wonderful promise that we too will be faced or gifted these gifts when we pass through our own valleys of darkness, tears, and ultimately the valley of our death. And the second reading, 1 Corinthians, many of us hear this at weddings, but I don't think young couples getting married actually know what love is, because we don't really know what love is until we've endured some life. Don and Rosalind lived a good life, lived a long life as a married couple, and they emanated what love truly is. This reading speaks to us regardless of our belief or value system, because it encourages us all to be people of love and to put love above everything we do and in everything we do and in every interaction we have with every person. The scripture tells us that if we don't have love as the basis for our words, actions and deeds, then everything we do is hollow and empty. Love is why you are here today. Love for Don and Rosalind. Love for each other. Remembering the love that they gave each and every one of you, and we've heard so much of that today from the children and the grandchildren. Above all that Don and Rosalind were, they were people who are embedded in love, deep love. This scripture tells us very clearly what true love looks like. Let us today and always be reminded to never put off telling but showing people how much they are loved. Because if love is true and sincere and present in our lives and in our actions, it will go on forever, and even the sting of death will not quench or destroy that bond of love. In my role as chaplain, I meet many beautiful people, sadly the majority of them at the most vulnerable time in their lives. I have the privilege of journeying with them some way down the path of life and to minister to them in times of illness and in times of need. This is how I met Rosalind and Don. It's difficult to talk about one of them without the other, as Rosalind and Don were always connected. The Rosalind and Don I knew were always together. When Rosalind was in hospital, Don faithfully came and sat with her for many hours each and every day. I rarely know of a day that he had away from his love. I know the family and myself encouraged him to go home early, have a day off, but he wouldn't. He was always there. I was so privileged to be able to minister to Rosalind, to pray with her and for her. Her faith was evident in her life. Her morals, values and ethics bear testimony to what she believed. She would call me after hours when everyone had gone home and she was in her bed at night at the hospital, and we would chat on the phone. The hospital was quiet, Don had gone home, and then we would really talk. I was always sure to bring a reflection or a verse to Rosalind every day when I visited her, and we would share what we thought the reflection meant to us. The Rosalind I knew was open and honest and nothing less than real. I always found her to be softly spoken, kind and gentle, and always grateful for the love and the friendship that people shared with her. Never an unkind word to escape her lips, and never grumbled even when suffering and discomfort. I believe that many didn't know how much she was suffering. The lady I knew was strong and determined. She knew what she wanted and she knew what she didn't want. She was impeccably dressed, always beautiful, and a real lady, and I mean that in the nicest of ways. After Rosalind died, I did many home visits to Don, always the gentleman, always making me sit in Rosalind's chair, always making the perfect cup of tea. We would sit and he would recount stories of times with his Rosie and how he met her. His favourite story and most told story, and I couldn't tell you how many times I've heard it, and maybe you've heard it, and we heard it today, of when their hands first touched in the back seat of the car and the electric shock went through them both and they knew that this was it. Don had a cheeky twinkle in his eye when he talked of his beloved. Don and Rosalind both were not afraid to die. I truly believe that. Rosalind rang me and told me where she was at, and I went to see her the next day and she was not afraid. She was sad to be leaving you. Don was ready to be reunited with his girl. I enjoyed my time with both Rosalind and Don, individually and collectively. They loved their family like no other, and their children and their grandchildren are their greatest joy and achievement out of all they've done in their life. Don and Rosalind have left us wonderful foundation stones on which we can build our own lives, as they showed us in their living and in their dying how to live a life even when faced with adversity, in a humble, gracious and loving manner. They have left so many memories for us all. Like all of you, in preparing what I was going to say today, I reflected a lot on how inadequate our vocabulary and time constraints can be when we try to encapsulate the lives of these beautiful people. Your Don and your Rosalind, good people who have touched my life, like yours, very deeply. All of you gathered here today have your own memories of Don and Rosalind and time shared with them. But as you'd appreciate, time is too short for all of us to share now. And so again, on behalf of the family, I extend an invitation to join with them at the end of the service, upstairs in the hall for some refreshments, and to continue sharing and remembering. And even if you've signed the guest book today, take the time upstairs and write a memory of a funny word, a time shared, because that memory book will go in time to the grandchildren and they will hear other stories. We pause now to remember as we watch a photo tribute that's been lovingly prepared for us today with music that has been stripped from Don and Rosalind's record collection. That's vinyl, that's LPs, black things that go round and round, if you young people don't know. Thank you.
been around the room, I've been recalling a few memories with people for, the best neighbourhood never was and never will be, I think, although I'm sure there's people here who'll say they had that too, but we were so lucky. And it was Nappy Gully and all the kids grew up together.
It was nice of Rosalind to thank you for all being here, wasn't it? It was lovely. We pause and reflect as we listen. Today we give thanks for the gift of Don and Rosalind's lives. We are thankful for their lives, for the time shared with them in love and in friendship. We hold close in our hearts and thoughts all who mourn the loss of Don and Rosalind, especially their much-loved children, David, Lynn and Ian, daughters-in-law, Sue and Louise, their 6 grandchildren, Joshua, Samuel, Matthew, Joanna, Liam, is that all of you? Daniel, there's another one. Don's brother Bill, sister-in-law Jackie, his sister Nina, Rosalind's sister-in-law Shelley, and all other family members. May your memories of good times shared comfort and sustain you today and always. We remember all who had Don and Rosalind as friends who gathered here today and those who cannot be with us in person. May you and they all find peace and comfort through the love and friendship that surrounds, and may each and every one of you move slowly towards your own place of peace and healing. We also acknowledge that Don and Rosalind's precious fur baby Shadow is missing them terribly, but is being lovingly cared for by family. We pause for a moment of silence to remember all whom we've personally loved and lost, remembering especially Rosalind's brother Malcolm and Don's brother-in-law Bill. I invite you, if you will, to pray with me the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. I just need tissue, sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, in a few minutes, our service will be complete. Again, I thank you for attending today, for the support you have extended to the family and for the friendship you have shared with Don and Rosalind. If you are able, please stand. Don and Rosalind are now both gone from this earthly dwelling and have left behind those who mourn their absence. We cherish the memory of their words, deeds, determination, generosity, their involvement in our lives and the lives of so many through church, scouts, guides. We cherish their love most of all. For all the good they did, we thank them, and from today forward we shall remember them with enduring love and affection. As we go our separate ways, remember Don as the engaging, cheeky man with a good sense of humour, who didn't suffer fools and who stood strong on what was right and always stood against what was wrong. We remember Rosalind, beautiful lady, gracious, loyal, beautiful inside and out, attractive and full of love. They have touched each of our lives, and we acknowledge that we are richer for having known them and been involved in their lives. May our gathering today express our affection for them. May it ease our sadness and strengthen our hope. Don, Roy, Hans, Kay, and Rosalind Beryl Kay have completed their circle of life. but they live on in all of you, and so continue to honour them in the way in which you live your lives as they did, with practicality, charm, love, and just a dash of cheekiness. May they now rest in peace. Amen. And from me to you, remember every tear is a tribute, every tear is a memory, and every memory is a treasure. If you need to sit, please do, because I'm going to share with you a very short verse from a book that I shared with Rosalind every day that she was in hospital, particularly through Advent and leading up to Christmas. She died in January, and so she went right through that Christmas season in hospital. And as Christmas is knocking on our door, I'd like to share this with you, as it was something that meant something to Rosalind. Connection. Take this moment to think about all the lives you have touched and all the lives that have touched yours in return. Think of the gifts you have given and the gifts you have received. Gifts as simple as a phone call, many. A smile, a shared moment. Envision that each act of giving ties us together, connects us with a spark and a light. Remember that we are all touched by that light, bound together by it, connected by kindness and by love. My friends, go with courage and be a gift of love and compassion for one another, and may you walk forward in life as people of peace. Amen.